Ready?
I know. We're good? Okay, thank you. I call the meeting of the Falmouth Public Schools to order for August 24th, 2021. Per Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the public will not be allowed to physically access the school committee meeting, but it can be viewed live on channel 14, and recording of this meeting can be viewed on YouTube. First, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to stop you for 1 second. You can move those desks back to where they were, because otherwise these people are out of the picture.
Where were
They were just kind of scooted back.
but then no one can see each other.
I'm sorry, but I can't see everybody on the camera, so we can't screen it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moving things around a little bit here. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. If any member of the public would like to make an audio or video recording of this meeting, please notify me by raising their hand, and I will notify the public per the Massachusetts public meeting laws. Do we have anyone who is making a recording today? Yes. Okay, so Mackenzie from the Enterprise and Jeanette Barnes. Thank you very much to the both of you. Kelly, would you like to read the mission and vision of Jessica Hill? Oh, and Jessica Hill. Hi, Jessica.
Okay. The mission of the Falmouth Public Schools is that Falmouth schools create world-class student learning experiences. Our Clippers are empowered to pursue their goals with curiosity, integrity, and resiliency. And our vision is that Clippers are creative, inquisitive, and engaged learners who participate in their community as socially responsible citizens. Clippers effectively communicate and solve problems that impact the world around them.
Thank you, Kelly. So on to public comment. Members of the public are welcome to speak about items that are not on the agenda. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes in length. Due to the open meeting law, there will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. Additional comments and feedback can also be submitted by email to schoolcommittee@falmouth.k12.ma.us. Do we have any public comment on items not on our agenda? If you could just raise your hand if you'd like to speak. I'll give you a few more moments. We do not.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yes, Melissa.
Since Dusty has made a decision of which I know that you're going to speak to,
Correct.
will we be removing the discuss and act on mask wearing for the start of the 2021 school year?
That's actually the next thing that we're going to talk about.
Okay, then I will stand down. I was
Okay.
just thinking, like, are people not speaking during public comment because it's on our agenda, but then we're going to remove it? I just want to make sure everyone has.
So fair question. So we are going to speak of it.
Okay.
So it's still on the agenda, which is why we're not opening up public comment on the
Okay.
agenda item.
Thank you.
Sure. So that was a wonderful segue from Melissa. So again, our first item on our agenda is to discuss and act on mask wearing for the start of the 2021-2022 school year. And before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to thank everyone who joined us last week at the listening session. We had, I believe, nearly 200 people, and we received 115 emails from families and students and teachers. So we really, really, truly appreciate your feedback and comments. As you may know, this morning, the board of the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education, known as DESE, voted to approve an indoor mask mandate for all K through 12 students and staff through October 1st. DESE is the governing body for schools in the Commonwealth. And as a result of this mandate, I propose that we move to postpone our discussion and action on mask wearing pending further guidance from DESE. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to postpone our conversation until you have further
guidance.
And guidance from Desi.
Right. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I didn't hear who that was. Leah second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So questions, comments? We can open this for discussion. Yes, Terry.
So I presume that when we do have our discussion about it, we will talk about when you tracing and ability to have things outdoors more because it's good weather. I mean, like having more, as many classrooms as possible outdoors, kids can eat lunch outdoors. Am I correct in understanding if they don't have to wear a mask outdoors?
Would you like to speak to that?
Okay, so those are the kind of things that we'll talk about, right?
Correct. I'm actually going to speak to those tonight during my update as well, but I can answer any questions now that you have. So question, or one of the questions is, do we have to wear a mask outdoors? We do not. There's no contact tracing for students that are outdoors, mask or unmasked. So, and we are going to try to have as many outdoor breaks, outdoor learning opportunities, and a rotation of lunch opportunities for students outdoors.
Go ahead, Bill.
Distancing protocols, are they still going to be in effect?
There are no distancing requirements, except for at lunch, when the masks are off and it needs to be 3 feet apart. And all of our lunch protocols are set up for students being 3 feet apart during lunch indoors while they take their mask off.
And there's a question regarding mask breaks. Is that going to be, is there a protocol around that going to be equitable for all the schools and classes?
So the principals are working on their schedules, and that is the goal. Yes, we will be working on toward that.
Leah, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, but I think we have a motion in a second, right? And so I think my question isn't really relevant to this. But maybe this is something we can discuss later. I'm just wondering about when we do have students quarantined and what will be the options for them. And I know that's not about masks, so.
That is going to be part of my update.
That's where my question is falling to, I think, so.
Melissa,
Sorry, I'm just,
no worries.
so I have questions around, I know that we're not gonna wear masks outside. Will the students be able to use the playground and the toys? Will they be able to intermingle with other students and not just students in their pod? Will they be only allowed to be in their section of the playground? What is that gonna look like?
So there's no cohorts. Yes, students can intermingle. They can play on all playground equipment, share equipment. We're back to full playing together. That's all.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, Andrea.
I also just wanted to echo your thank you to the community for all their input and to recognize that we all really want to see this getting to normal. And I think that was a big part of what the mask discussion was about. And so I really did empathize with that and know that is where we want to be as soon as feasible. And I do think that, there are people who were advocating to not have masking that will be, I'm sure, disappointed with the information from Desi. But at the same time, we did also receive those emails where people recognized that even though that's not what they want this school year to look like, that we are all in this together and they could see the benefit for the greater good. And I was just heartened to see those emails coming through that could just say, as Falmouth, we can pull together as a community to do this, to get to where we want to be, that fully normal as soon as possible. And so I was really appreciative of everyone who said that.
I agree. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Leah, I can't.
Sorry.
No, it's the setup. Yeah, do you have
A quick comment. Again, I'd like to just acknowledge and thank all the individuals, teachers, even some students, parents who interjected, whether it's for mask, against mask. I thought the openness was just fabulous. I think we need that in the community. I think it's great to have. I've always been a proponent of when we have public comment, I would love to have the public comment.
Yeah.
And sometimes we lack that, but over this last masking situation, it was just great to see everybody involved. And I'd also like to thank Kelly for responding. And I appreciate that and you did a great job. Thank you.
Well, to sort of piggyback on that, you know, I know the whole committee read them. I responded to them, but I know everybody was reading them. And I'm sure you noticed, like I did, that, you know, you'd think that after 100 emails, you wouldn't be reading anything new, but we were. There were, right up to the last minute, there were people making points or examples that no one else had made yet.
Right.
And, you know, that just tells you how beneficial it is to reach out and get the whole community's input on something, because you're going to hear things that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah, it's a learning experience for us as well.
Yeah.
It's so thoughtful. Melissa.
I just wanted to quell any concerns of the public, because I know that although the emails are a matter of public comment, a lot of people probably aren't going to go and read them, and that's okay, because it is a lot, 100 plus. But I just really want to say that there were well-written, compelling emails on both sides. There was not, I'm not voicing my opinion either way. I just really want to let the public know that we appreciated every email that came in, and that both sides were well thought out, well written for the most part, and I appreciated it.
Especially our students.
The students were.
Those student emails with like data points and like references and
videos.
videos.
Right.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Leah, I think you're missing one.
Yeah, well, I you know, it's already been said, but I really did appreciate reading all of those emails. Like I really looked forward to it, just hearing from everyone. So thank you so much for taking the time to reach out to us. And I don't know, Natalie, if you want to share any information about what we did learn from those emails, because it aligns with where we are moving.
Yeah, specifically, what were you seeking information on? Because there was so much that I
Well,
could.
just that
go into
we
depth.
did hear from a lot of people who really did want a mask mandate.
Correct.
And that, you know,
Let's see
that
if I can-
aligns with what the commissioner has put out, so.
Yes, I don't have the exact numbers, but yes, there's like a 3-to-1 in favor of the mask mandate. So we are hearing you. I believe it was 87-28 in favor and 28 opposed to a mandate.
So I think for me, and hearing from our community and seeing that does align with, you know, where the majority of the community members who are reaching out to us felt, and that having the commissioner be able to align with that was, I felt good about that moving
Yes.
forward, so.
Absolutely. Okay, so any other comments or questions? Yes, sorry, Terry.
I was thinking when I was talking about the outdoor stuff, that I think we should give another shout out to Amy Lenardi, who has,
Yeah.
she's been even this summer trying to tweak what's available, and we're very lucky for the initiative that she undertook.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Amy.
Amy and team, thank you.
Yes, Andrea.
Just one more thing. When Lee was bringing up the things that we learned, something that I found very interesting was people opening up and telling us a lot about what goes on in their lives, because I think we all see the surface and we don't really know. I mean, the sheer number of people who have family members who are immunocompromised or other things that are going on in their lives, and we don't necessarily see that, and we might be just focusing on one piece of it, but there's so much more complexity, and I think we learn through those emails how much complexity there is in this.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Andrea. Any other comments or feedback? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. It's a roll call vote. So Bill Ryder, I'll begin with you. Oh, yeah, it doesn't have. We're all, you're right. Oh, that's right. I'm so used to like.
I
zooming. I'm so used to
know.
someone
I'm not
there.
trying to tell you what to do, but.
Oh, this is delightful.
I know.
Okay, so,
Are we gonna open it up, like, are we listening? Okay.
thank you. Okay, so,
It's been a little while. Can you just
Yes, I'm gonna read, yeah, exactly. We're gonna circle right back to the beginning. Okay, so the motion on the table is to move that we postpone our discussion and action on mask wearing pending further guidance from DESE. So all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously that we will postpone our discussion pending guidance from DESE. So
Can I get a clarification? So because we know that there already, currently there's an October 1 date attached to that, we can let our families know that that will happen in September, right? We're not postponing it for.
yes, so, okay, so we're not, yeah, exactly, yes, we're not postponing it indefinitely, and more information is coming from DESE. So it's going to be a sort of a moving target, but we're gonna have these conversations, be very candid and open and transparent about the process, but in September, yes. Okay. So moving forward, next item on the agenda is to act on student handbooks for the 2021-2022 school year. Is it Sonia or?
Sonia.
Okay, Sonia, would you like to introduce this?
Sure, thank you. Good evening. We are coming back for the second read and seeking your approval of the revisions both to the language around homework as well as the language around discipline. And from the feedback that we had last time we're together, we are outlining a plan for introductory screencasts, especially to the newer pieces around discipline in particular from the feedback we had after the first read. And there was a reference to expulsion that is being removed, making sure I had to check first to make sure we had all the correct references to 37H, H&1/2, H3/4. We do. And so there was one lingering reference that we're going to be removing. Thank you.
I'm going through, any comments, Lisa, Leah?
I feel like I should have noticed this before, but I think because there's so much text there, it was, but I have a question about the school resource officer. So I'm noticing that.
Can you tell me where you are? Tell us where you are. What page you're on? Or just a section?
It's not numbered.
Is it one of the chapters? Is it listed under one of the individual schools?
It's under the infractions and responses. So if you go to either Morris Pond, Lawrence, or the high school.
Okay, so in the table, okay.
Yeah, you'll
Perfect.
see at a level 4, so which is kind of the highest level of discipline.
Yes.
That the school resource officer is in there.
Yep.
But the school resource officer is not involved in any other level. And I went back and just kind of did some research around school resource officers and especially about our new school resource officer and what really he would like to be looked at. And he had talked about being a mentor and a coach. And I just felt like this didn't necessarily align with that kind of support, that it just put the school resource officer at more of this really high level of discipline instead of more of the restorative practice throughout the levels.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Can I speak to that?
Okay.
Being a former school resource officer, one of the things that SROs try very hard to do is not to become necessarily a part of classroom and school discipline or school infractions that are not necessarily criminal infractions. So from that standpoint, I do think it's important to try to kind of keep those two separate. But that being said, in my experience, when I have a young person who's having a struggle that may need some of that mentoring, the SRO is always there for a teacher, a principal, or a guidance counselor, or someone to reach out to and say, hey, this kid really seems like he's going down the wrong path. I think it would be great. Well, maybe if you could talk to him or something along those lines. They're always there for that. But at the same time, and I want to look at it more closely to see exactly what you're talking about, but just from my own experience, that I used to go around to the schools at the beginning of the school year and talk to all the teachers and tell them, I am not here to help you control your classroom. Don't call me in to control you. That's a classroom, that's a school thing, discipline. It's not, we're here to be mentors, we're here to be friends, we're here to keep you safe. And we're here in case someone does something really dumb, you know, where that would be the same as being a crime on the street. Then obviously they need to step in. I wanted to give that kind of that little piece of background, that personal experience with that, if that helps anybody with that, feel a little bit better about the word. But I want to find exactly where you're looking.
I'm sorry, it's not labeled the pages.
Yeah, it's in each of the tables.
It's in the
Yeah,
table.
it's-
Yeah,
it's
yeah, for
on
each
one of the
school.
tables that get repeated. It's, yeah, and
And level 3.
It is
Yeah.
level 3 at the level.
At Morse Pond.
Is it Morse Pond where?
Morse
it's-
Pond has a
yeah,
level
assistant
3.
SR.
Yeah, and I think Sonia wants to, I see. Sonia, go ahead. I think you're ready to go. Yeah.
It appears in levels 3 and 4. It also appears in the same areas where it lists the group 2 report. And that's a specific report that moves from the school to the police department for notification of specific events like assaults. It's not precluding the relationship that's being built. I think what it is sharing that there are specific incidents where we have to report. And so the first level of building that connection would be to involve hopefully our school resource officer before moving on to others within the department. But it's in the same columns where the group 2 reporting is included. And again, you know, especially certainly knowing the work that Officer Hurt or Sergeant Hurt has begun with, and Officer Brandt will continue, and having that opportunity to speak with them, I don't see them not taking the time to build those mentoring relationships as well. But just to kind of clarify why it appears where it is in the context of these tables.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if school resource involvement was in the earlier stages, then they would have to involve the SRO, is that correct? Whereas
Yes.
it's an option, of course, to call them in, but not necessarily making everything a police matter. Without,
Right. Yeah, and then building from our frame of restorative practices and really trying to be more positively oriented, there could be small group, you know, larger group, maybe a whole grade level where there's specific instruction or education, and that's something that the SRO can be part of. But yes, to your point, it doesn't mean that they have to come in a purposeful way around the framework of discipline.
Andrea, I saw you.
yeah, I guess I, appreciate that you brought that up and looking at that in a little bit more detail. And I think it's because it's so abbreviated in a table that it loses all of the deeper meaning of everything that we've just discussed, because it gets listed as, we're putting in interventions and consequences, which are two vastly different things. And so you might look at it and say, is that a consequence or is that an intervention? And it's in here with things like, court involvement. And so I do think it's not saying in this table what it's intended to mean. And I think that we could probably do a better job of putting that in, clarifying that somewhere else than adding that into just a table format. The other thing I noticed is it is in the elementary school level one as well. And we don't have an SRO for the elementary school, right? Or how would that?
I think we do.
Well, we don't, but we they're welcome to involve the SRO even as a consultation, to involve, to help, talk through intervention. So we still involve them in such a way, even though they're not actually housed there. So our Officer Brandt will be at the high school and then at Lawrence, but can go to any of the other schools. We also have liaisons. So not SRs, but we have liaisons at every one of the schools. So that could also be called for that same purpose. But we really have used our SRO in a collaborative way. Being part of the team, talking through things, because we are not trying to jump to discipline immediately, but what else can, and try to understand the situation. So they have been involved in situations at all levels.
Great, Kelly. So two things, and I can't even, it's just so funny, the more we talk about stuff, the more we realize. So regarding the SRO and then also the IST that's also in that table, I don't think that we can think that our families know what those are. They're not going to know what those acronyms mean. So maybe underneath, in the little box underneath, can we at least define in the tables what all these acronyms are so that our families and our kids know?
In our school committee, what is IST? I'm sorry.
Instructional
team.
support team.
Intentional support team?
Instructional.
Instructional, thank you.
So that's my first thought. And then the other thought is more of a follow, well, I'll hold it for later because it's a follow-up, so, okay.
Yeah, one more thought, just, it's really nice to hear people's perspective on this. And I think for me, because we're moving to this restorative justice practice, I think that's where it just was, when I looked at just the SRO being involved at those heavier levels, I just felt like, wouldn't it be nice for there just to be, more involvement throughout the process, that, we're a team on this. And that was my thought. So when I saw that, that was really what I was thinking.
So I think that's the practice.
Yeah.
I don't think the document reflects it. I don't know if it belongs there, because I think, as Bill said, those are kind of like what we do with the infractions, right? That's when they get, but we possibly do a better job explaining how we help the SRO helps us in our team process and being part of that collaborative process way before it gets to that level.
Melissa.
Thank you.
I appreciate, Bill, your input on exactly what an SRO does. I can say it's been a nice refresher. I know that we talked about it a few years ago when Sergeant Hurt came and we met at the high school library, and I appreciate, I feel like I'm looking at it through a different lens now, and it's always good for a refresher. So I like that you clarified saying that, if you have it at level 3 and 4, the SRO has to be involved. But to not have the SRO listed in level 1 and 2, it's more of a, if you need me, I'm here, but I don't have to be part of it, because as soon as the SRO is part of it, now it's, we can't unring the bell. This is what's happening. It's out there. Whereas in level 1 and 2, if you choose to bring the SRO in, it's more of a support, a collaboration, a united front. But just so you know, if you get up to levels 3 and 4, there's no turning back. Like, we have to go down this path. We don't have another option. So I appreciate the clarification and the discussion around this.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I could just go on too, some parents, if they get called by the school that their child was involved in a level 1 or 2 infraction, not every parent is going to respond the same way if they hear the police were involved.
Right.
Even if it was just a, hey, you want to pull them off the side and have a chat with them, not every parent necessarily responds the same way. So I do think we need to be cautious about that as well.
Yeah. Andrea.
And that's the necessity of a referral system, where a guidance counselor or assistant principal or somebody, crisis counselor working with a kid, thinks that maybe this would be a good situation for an SRO to get involved. And I'm fine with that. I think that's excellent. That's just additional help, support.
Andrea.
I think part of the trouble with the table right now, and maybe why we're struggling with this a little bit, is that second section is called interventions and consequences. And those two things are very different. we're working to build more of the interventions so we don't have as many of the consequences. When they're all lumped together, it's hard to look at that and decide which one of those are interventions and which ones are consequences.
Yeah.
And so, and I think, again, when you only see the SRO being listed at the level 3 or level 4, that can look like a consequence to people. And so I'm wondering if we could at least clarify it by separating those into 2 different sections.
Right, and along those lines is another one that sort of spoke to me in terms of at Morse Pond, I believe it begins, the 5 or more unexcused tardies per quarter. And as I mentioned before, I get to meet a 5th or 6th grader who is responsible for getting themselves to school on time. So to your point, that is another example of that shouldn't have a consequence, that should have an intervention. If you're noticing the tardies and we're noticing the absences, that's an intervention moment, not a consequence. So that's a wonderful example that you gave about breaking them out. And I wonder if the tardies and absences could follow a similar pattern as well. Sonia.
Tardies and absences are tied specifically to the attendance policy. So that one would be a 2-part. That was part of the attendance study committee from a couple of years ago. And so that piece is tied in there. So yes, in looking at that, I just wanted to share that that's a 2-part one that needs to go back to the policy.
Thank you for that. And I think we should look at both of those sections. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah,
Bill.
just one more. Expulsion, why was that eliminated? Maybe I'm missing something on that.
So under the revisions within the law, and that we can't exclude a student from their education, really any form of expulsion is just a long or a longer term suspension. We really can't exclude students, so we don't elevate to the level of expulsion.
But an expulsion based on a certain age factor, it could be gone from school, or obviously then we'd have to find an alternative based on the age factor. So why isn't then expulsion carried on? Because there is that possibility. It's something as a former administrator I look at, say, there is that possibility. No, I don't expel anybody, but there's always that possibility. Just comment.
Any other comments? Yeah, sorry, Leah. Yeah.
So Sonia and policy, I am so sorry to keep on bringing up things because you guys are working so hard at this. I just feel like personally, there's so much text here, and because discipline is something we really know that this is an area that we really need to work on. And I just want to make sure we do it right. And so I'm sorry to be nitpicky and really focusing on these things, but that's the reason behind it. I just think it's really critical for us to do this well. But I know how much.
But no, so you're not adding another thing to reduce the amount of text, or that was just.
Oh, well, we talked about that before.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
So just
We talked
making
about
notes
that,
on things
yes.
to work
Yeah.
on.
I find that this is very, very dense.
We did reduce some of it.
Okay,
And then we get to law.
and the clarification of terms. But I also think that because this is now worded as restorative practices, that just ensuring that everything that's written here is through that lens. So that we're really thinking that way, because just like what you pointed out, Andrea, around these consequences, that's not really what restorative practices are for. So it I'm just thinking that there's probably a way of clarifying this a little bit more around, here are the supports in place. If these supports, if there are consequences, once these supports are put in place and they're not working, but that these are what we're going to focus on. I don't know how to do that, but.
So, Andrea,
Say before we vote on this.
yes, we have to
I
talk
wanted
this
some
through.
clarification. Should I ask my question, or do you want
Sure.
to just?
No, ask your question.
I understand that the time is of the essence because we're about to start the school year and we need to have handbooks. We did make the switch to electronics, so that gives us flexibility. So are we going to try I guess I want to know exactly, are we voting on this with some modifications that come back at some point, or?
So my thoughts on that, so first, let's discuss what the modifications and edits look like. Our next school committee meeting isn't until the 18th, and I'm sure you want to get this moving before that, or let me sort of step back. What is the policies subcommittee's timeline for these handbooks? Can anyone speak to that? Terry? A month ago?
This is late for us, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, we usually do this in the spring.
yeah, so I just wanted to confirm like where you were at the timeline. So I propose that we make the motion that includes the edits, right? So defining the acronym, breaking out intervention versus consequence. Is that something the policy subcommittee could go back and revise?
Sure. Of course we can. We're happy to, yeah.
How are we gonna do which part? To break out the interventions versus
Yeah.
consequences?
It's just not, and I'm not on policy, but it's not entirely clear to me how within the table we would be able to do that.
You got another, like maybe another line.
Oh, one that would be, oh, I got you. Yep,
Expected
yep, yep.
interventions, you know.
Now I do.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Now I get it. I was thinking like individually, I
Oh,
cannot
gosh. Oh, no,
imagine
no,
how chaotic the table would be.
No.
But okay, I'm good now. Thanks.
So policy, but did you have a question or comment?
I hate to throw a wrench in,
Hmm.
but along the line of an SRO being a resource, I want to make sure that if we are going to divide interventions and consequences, that we're not basically labeling the SRO as a consequence, because that defeats what the SRO is really all about.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that that gets put in as an intervention,
Mhm.
because, I mean, let's face it, if there's any type of criminal act, the SRO will decide the consequence.
Correct.
Based on law.
Correct.
So, yeah, I just want to make sure that we put it that way so that it's not viewed that they are the consequence if something happens.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a great comment.
And I think that's exactly what the kind of issue was here with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like there are consequences. That's not how it should be. Yes.
Right, yep.
That's great. So Andrea, I know that you're keeping notes of the edits. So would you like to make the motion and include the edits that you have heard?
So I guess we could make a motion to approve the student handbooks for the 2021-2022 school year, pending edits that we define any acronyms and clarify the difference between an intervention and a consequence in the tables that appear.
Perfect, thank you. Terry?
I don't know that we want to use the word pending. I think it's the wrong verb.
With the edits.
It should say with these edits, including, yeah.
Including.
That's what we usually say, I think, with
Yeah.
edits.
With, yes.
Because then it doesn't have to come.
Exactly, and we want you to start. Okay, so thank you for that motion. Is there, oh, Bill,
Does
yeah.
this delay the timeline then to get them out?
When is your next policy meeting?
We don't know what's that
Yeah.
books yet.
You know, obviously, first day of school's coming up.
Yeah.
But I don't think
Is
it's,
that the
none of this
purpose?
is changing the content. We're clarifying only by
So,
I think it would be very.
explaining acronyms and by separating those things out. We won't be adding anything into those boxes or subtracting. It will just be shifting the information around. That can be done online. And so I don't think because you're not making any substantive change to the content, it should be okay to put that up there and then, republish it
Mhm.
as soon as it's been
Okay.
tidied up.
It's a fair question. Thank you. Okay, so did we have a?
We don't have a second.
Thank you. I was waiting. You were waiting patiently to say second. And because again, we're all here, all in favor of the motion to act on the student handbooks for the 2021-2022 school year with the edits that Andrea mentioned. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it passes unanimously. Next, act on surplus technology equipment. Lori.
Yes, so I believe that we had mentioned we were fortunate that we were able to upgrade all of our smart boards to Clear Touch and has many more features for the teachers. So in that process, now we have several smart boards across the district, projectors. We don't have to use the projectors any longer. And there's still a few boards, which are even older. But so we need to surplus these. We are contacting other districts to see if they want smart boards. Maybe they've not been able to upgrade. We have been able to find a few schools that are going to take some of them. We're going to continue to see if they can be useful other places. But at this point, we no longer need this technology.
The new technology, the clear touch boards, were they from the ESSER dollars and cents?
So we intended to do that, but Mr. Murphy did his magic and we were able to, and I should say, and Mike Falcone, he's great at finding excellent deals. And we were able to secure that under our regular tech budget.
Okay, excellent.
So
Okay,
we're pleased that we were.
Murphy.
Yeah, exactly. The two of them are pretty remarkable.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, is there a motion? Anyone would like to make a
Sure,
motion?
I'll make a motion that we declare the items listed surplus.
Is there a second, Andrea? And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And against, unanimous. Okay, so we have moved that.
Diana, can I just ask a question
Yes.
about, so if we don't have districts who would take this, is there a cost associated with removal of these items or disposing of the items?
Okay, next on our agenda is the first read of school committee goals for the 21-22 school year. And it's just for the public. Last Tuesday, seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only last Tuesday, the school committee had a retreat to go over our goals. And we identified 3 goals for this school year. The first is communication with stakeholders. We recognize that communication will be a two-way process that requires both listening and delivering information. And we also recognize that all communication should include an equity lens to ensure all voices are heard and everyone is reached. Our second goal is that the Falmouth School Committee will solidify its efforts to build a foundation of knowledge and understanding around equity, access, inclusion, diversity, and systemic racism. And our third goal is that the Falmouth School Committee will support the superintendent's efforts to keep schools safe and open. So school committee, you can take a read through and we will revisit these goals on our September 14th agenda.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
So thank you. First of all, thank you for turning the mess that we wrote down into something
You're welcome.
that was so good.
You're welcome.
But I'm not exactly sure how I want to describe this, but basically when we worked our way through our conversations, brainstorming key actions, we were literally brainstorming. So
Correct.
at least in our group, so we were throwing everything in.
Mhm.
And, then when I have a chance to sit back and look at it again, there are things that I don't want
Mhm.
that we wrote down, that I wrote down.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering how we're going to, and I'm not even sure all these are actually key actions. So how are we going to work? I just want to be prepared so we can
Correct.
make the
So-
most of it on the next meeting.
Yes, so before the 14th, please read through and anything that you feel is redundant or doesn't quite articulate your vision for it, cross it out and we can discuss it. If
Okay.
you look at a lot of these key actions, they overlap in some ways,
Yeah.
but I thought it was really important to list everything that was said, and then we can, as a group, sort of
Yeah.
drill down more.
Okay.
So this is just a neatened up brain dump of our
Okay.
key actions, and
And then do we have an idea of how many we want to maybe whittle it down to? Because these are, some of them are a lot of things to try and accomplish. Is there something that's reasonable?
So I don't want to limit ourselves at this point. I think read through it, sort of identify what feels right for you, and then we can discuss it. But I don't want to say just 3 things and maybe we really need a
Okay.
4th one. So just read through and we can sort of whittle down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
I just want to be prepared, because to me, these are so important to the work that we do during the year. And I just want to make sure that we do it really well.
100%.
Yeah, and in order to do that, we have to all be really ready to
We do,
take
and I'm
this.
glad you mentioned that, because
Yeah.
one thing I did not state is, as we discussed at the retreat, because we have some really dense goals, I want to make sure that there is accountability. So you'll notice that the goals on the 2nd page, there are people who are responsible for, tracking benchmarks and reporting back to the larger committee to make sure that we are on target with that. Carrie.
In that benchmark category, since it involves not just us in this decision, I was wondering if I guess this would be an edit I would add, but it might need advance notice. Ask some people from the union to be involved in helping us with our surveys and our benchmarks
Yes.
from the get-go. So because it involves them, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just taking note. That's great. Andrea.
I agree that this is a really good summary of our discussions, and I was also wondering about how we're gonna get from here into the goals, which is something we would normally do, continue in like a retreat or a
Correct.
workshop
Yeah.
setting. Because I know the couple of people that were on mistakenly at our retreat last week were probably, not interested in watching us, do all the wordsmithing and things like
Right.
that. So I guess now that I know that you're gonna be soliciting feedback in between, I guess I want to encourage everyone to, as you're looking at these, really making sure that we're setting SMART goals, so that because if we have people who are supposed to be looking and following up and doing benchmarks, and we evaluate ourselves at the end of the year, that it has to be measurable. So we have to really kind of make sure that we're crafting it with that. I also think that because they're so meaty, that we should be doing the same thing that the superintendent's been doing, which is looking at these as multi-year and kind of those key actions, maybe prioritizing and thinking about what things might flow into a following year. So I definitely think that we need to polish that, and hopefully we'll be able to do that by email. But if not, maybe we should consider another way to get us together to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is, a work in progress. And I think to your point, we want to do it right, and we don't want to rush this. So that was why it was so important to include everyone's feedback and to get a sense of where are we and where do we see our priorities within these goals. So definitely work in progress, edit, share thoughts, and we'll come back together on the 14th to review everything and have an idea about the goals. Any other questions or comments? Okay, very good. Next is the first read of school committee / superintendent operating protocols for 21-22. Again, this was the other document that we reviewed during our retreat. And what I did for this is just a first read. Any edits that I included, I put in maroon so that you would know where to look. Maroon, wasn't that clever?
Yeah.
But anyway, so that way you know. So read through this, and again, we'll take this up on the 14th to tweak any final edits.
So
on
we
them.
don't want any edits now. You want to wait?
No, it's first read.
Okay.
Yep, read through.
Can I do an overarching piece? Is that because we don't necessarily go into big editing like this very frequently, and this document stands for a while, I was just thinking that making the voice match throughout, because I think some of our new ones have shifted that. So if we could do that, and only being that picky because it's going to probably be around for a while.
Okay, yep. I
Maybe
see
somebody
what you-
could take that before. That's the
Yeah,
kind
I
of
see
thing
what
that's
you-
gonna be tedious to do in a group of 10 people. Maybe we could deal with the voice thing ahead of
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yep, I see what you're saying.
Because it doesn't
Susan,
change
you-
the content.
Yeah, okay, so we'll tweak that as well.
I think that's
Yeah.
helpful to do it. I think.
Do I hear a volunteer from Leah? Excellent. Oh, good. Sold and sold. Thank you, Leah.
Because once you notice it, it's like,
Yeah, and exactly. I was just more looking at the content, exactly. Okay, so thank you for that. So again, we will revisit the operating protocols on the 14th. And thank you, Leah, for voice consistency. Next update from the superintendent.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
So we began new staff orientation today. We welcome our faculty and staff back next Tuesday for convocation. Wednesday of next week, educators will work in a classroom, and Thursday set aside. And just around the corner is our first student day on Wednesday, September 8th. So again, Wednesday, September 8th. I know it's a little different this year, so we'll keep reminding our families that we'll start on Wednesday and not Tuesday. So to continue with some COVID-related updates, as you've already stated, the board for the elementary and secondary education did pass the mandate, indoor mask mandate for all school employees and students age 5 and above. That goes through October 1st. As of now, they're stating that after October 1st, districts will need to demonstrate 80% vaccination per school among their staff and students. And then what that would indicate if we reach the 80%, that the vaccinated staff and students would no longer have to wear a mask. So that would be for, I believe, our Lawrence School and our high school. Although we do have 12-year-olds at Morris Pond, it's typically just our 6th graders, so it's half the school. I think that may be difficult to reach. I just wanted to bring that out. I do think there was indication that we were going to receive more guidance, so I'm glad that we're going to be revisiting that.
Can I ask a question? I know that this wasn't shared, but I don't think. Just thinking about how we would know if 80% are vaccinated when we can't require people to show proof of vaccination because it's not.
Yep.
Did they address that at all in the?
So they have not. So what I was, we're going to be asking our staff and families to share just the same as we did in the spring, and quite a few did. And I think that that's the best we're going to be able to do is knowing that we, for 2 reasons. One, the metric, well, if we're going to be able to achieve 80%, if that's our goal, then, I hope people will be encouraged to share that information. But secondly, we need the information for quarantine purposes. And that was really our reason in the spring that we needed. So when we were going through our quarantine protocols, vaccinated individuals did not have to quarantine. So that information, and that is still an option through the updated protocols I'm going to go over in a few minutes too. So I will be encouraging through my letters, but there will also be a communication out from our public health nurse, Jen Reisfelder, asking people to share that information. Not a mandate, just encouraging to share. Yeah.
I'm going to hold my question because I'm sure you're going to answer a bunch of my questions before I
Melissa,
go.
was your question directly tied to that statement?
Yes. So currently, we require students to show proof of vaccination when they come to public school. So I don't think that this would be any different. I know that we are not requiring staff to show vaccination. And that would fall under the asking people to share, but it is required that we ask students. Just wanted to clarify that. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
they only have to demonstrate vaccination status for a required vaccine. So, and this is technically not a required vaccine. So they don't have to share it. And we don't have, and we can't, like, we can ask, but we can't like tell them they have to.
Who decides who the required vaccines are? The state or the district?
The state. Terry has a
Um,
question.
Could we go to 90% if we wanted to, for example? I mean, where did the 80% come from?
That's a question. I'm not sure, but you can always go beyond.
I
Right?
thought-
You could
I thought that,
be more strict than what the department, we can't go under. Right. So having some metrics was something that we were discussing with our COVID team, including Scott McGann and Dr. Parkinson. We had already been looking at some of the metrics as part of a recommendation for the school committee as a way of being able to move beyond the mask and see where we, would be a good time to do that. So I don't know that we're going to have that option now. 80% will be, is a high bar.
Yeah, it is.
I just.
And I think we need to really push this through, whether it's discussions with classes, whether it's signage, whether it's behavior, like a group meeting, or behavioral or whatever, faculty meetings. I think we have to promote and push vaccinations as much as possible in our setting, because we're hoping that we can get to the 80%. We'd love to take these things off our kids.
So it wouldn't be for all students. It would be only for the vaccinated
Vaccinated,
students.
yes.
and
But
staff.
80%, that would be great.
So speaking of that, we are offering our third vaccination clinic for our students. The first dose will be offered on September 24th, and the second dose will be offered on October 15th. And this information will be going out to our families tomorrow. It's the Barnstable County Health Department that's administering the vaccines for us again. So along with that, I encourage all of our unvaccinated staff that they can participate as well. So this clinic is during the school day at 3 of our schools. Any of our employees would be able to participate. And then 12-year-olds and above at the 3 schools. So each school, Morris Pond, Lawrence, and the high school will each have their own clinic.
Could you say those dates again, please?
September 24th would be the first dose, and
Thank you.
October 15th would be the second dose.
Thank you. That's put on by Barnstable County Health Department
Yes.
for students and staff during the school day at Morris Pond, Lawrence, and the high school for ages 12 and over.
Correct.
Thank you.
Is there any way we can bring that forward, since we're looking at an October 1st deadline, and this one is October 15th? Is there any way Scott McGann can support, help, maybe promote something that we can do internally as Falmouth?
These were the best dates that worked on our school calendars and the county calendars to offer
Okay.
this time.
And it just takes, it will take 2 weeks
After
after
that,
that, yeah, so you still, yeah, it would still be longer.
but I also, in my letter tomorrow, there's many places that you can just walk in and get vaccinations. You can also contact your primary care physician. I'm just trying to offer, an additional opportunity. We offered the one in August, and
Yes.
we had over 40 students vaccinated in August, and then we had the one in June, late May, and then ran into June. So we, as long as we keep offering and trying to, make it available, but it's not the only place it's available. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so the diagnostic testing options that the state is offering, we did apply and we have been approved for in-school diagnostic testing. And the diagnostic testing has 2 components. One is the symptomatic testing. When a student or staff member presents with symptoms during the school day, they may be tested with a Bionex Now rapid antigen test. And then depending on those results, may be referred to a PCR test. But that's the first level. I do want to say that we are asking staff and families, do not come to school, do not send their students to school. You know, if you're having symptoms when you're already at home, you're supposed to stay at home. But this is a tool that we're going to be able to offer during the school if someone, so different from last year, if a student presented with COVID-like symptoms, we would have to send home, and we, you know, often ask the families to contact their pediatrician or, you know, to have their child tested. So this is an option that we could do that for families. And this is of no cost to staff or families. The second diagnostic testing option is the test and stay for close contacts. So if you're asymptomatic student or staff member, and you've been identified as a close contact of a positive COVID individual, you could actually be tested in school, and you can, if it's negative, you can stay in school. And then you are tested for approximately 5 days. Depends, it's over a 7-day period. So in case a weekend falls in there, but you're tested for 5 days. And if you're negative, each one of those, you just stay in school. So this is something that they've, the public health and Bessie has come up with to try to keep kids in school longer. So we're not sending students home. Both. Tests.
Sorry, is that for vaccinated and unvaccinated students, or is it
So,
just unvaccinated?
So the asymptomatic, right, is just for the unvaccinated. So if I can jump down there, that's fine. So I'm just, no, I'm trying. So if you're vaccinated and you don't have symptoms, you don't have to do that. You don't have to, you can just stay in school. If you're a close contact, you're asked to wear your mask for a 14-day period, but you don't have to test and you don't have to quarantine. If you're vaccinated, of course, we're all coming back with masks, so that one's already taken care of for that piece of it. No, what I was getting ready to say is that the for both the symptomatic testing and the test and stay does require parent consent.
Thank you.
So if a parent does not give consent for us to do the testing in school, then that would revert back to the traditional quarantine protocols.
Is it going to be, is it going to be like the blanket consent at the start of the year, like we do for, yes, you can give my kid an ibuprofen? Okay.
So they've already, it's a standard form. It's going to be used across the state. They will be sent home the first day of school with students.
So not like scrambling to get in touch with the parent at the last second.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
great, thanks.
Andrea has.
Oh,
Sorry, I know there's like just so like
And there-
everybody's
there's a
trying
lot.
to visualize exactly how this works, right? So you were saying that it's the rapid antigen test. How rapid is rapid? I'm trying to think like, could you
15
walk us
minutes.
through the process? A kid comes into school, I'm assuming this happens first thing unless you found out during the school day or on those 5 subsequent days, they come in. How does that process happen? How long does it take? Are the buses also involved in the close contacts and just, I don't know if you can walk through.
I have all the ones that's excluded, but I'll walk through. So during the day, a student presents with certain symptoms, sent to the nurse's office. They would be given the test. It's a swab test. It's 15 minutes, and you would have the results, positive or negative. Positive, obviously, there's a different path we would take. You know, the parent would be contacted and asked to pick up. If it's negative, then the student can stay in school.
And these, the rapid tests now, where do they stand? Because I can remember all the things Scott saying on a regular basis, you know, the gold standard being the PCR. And so where do the rapids fit in now? Like how good are they in terms of being able to select this out?
So I do know that even, so rapid tests at one time were not counted in the testing process, as Scott had explained. But now he's including those in the case counts when it's just the rapid that's given. So if our understanding is that if it is a negative, we're fine. If it presents as a positive, then we would be asking them to get a PCR test that may or may not have the same results. And then the PCR would rule over the positive of the antigen test. So then, I don't know if you want me to keep, so if there, let's say that's positive and we have close contacts, then whoever the close contacts would be also be given the test. And then 15 minutes we would know, and then they could stay in school. And then every morning after that for, five mornings, that test would be given first thing in the morning when they come in. If it's negative, they stay. If it's positive, then we go through that process again.
And it's by the school nurse?
It doesn't have to be. So there is training. You can actually train anyone to actually give the test. So we're sticking with our school nurses, our health assistants. Remember, we kept our health assistants. So we have a nurse and a health assistant in every building. The high school has 2 nurses, and we have 2 floating nurses. Dr. Woodward is also trying to secure some additional nurses and just some, I think we're calling them like, testing monitors to help with the labels and doing that kind of thing, just for the morning hours that can float across the schools just to help out with the testing if that's necessary.
Andrew. And I'm trying to think about all the things that parents may be thinking, watching this and hearing it for the first time. So there may be lots of people out there who have never had a test, or the kids have never had a test, and we've heard the stories, or if you've done it, like it's, poking you in the brain. So with this rapid test, can you explain what that would be like so that people have a comfort in this happening to their kids?
It's just a nasal swab on the inside. So it is not the PCR test that was further in. So it's just basically.
It's not the brain test.
It's not the brain test. It's kind of just that your nasal area in the front.
Can I take this one since I do
Go
it every
ahead.
day?
Yeah, sure.
Would that be
You
all
can
right?
explain it better.
Is that okay for you? Can I take this one, Andrew? Okay, so we don't do the touch your brain anymore. That's totally off the table. Oftentimes when you are doing the newer one, you only have to go in one nostril. Depending on which rapid test you have, you can just go inside both nostrils, but sometimes depending on which brand we get, it's just inside the one nostril. You kind of swirl it around for maybe 10, 15 seconds. It's so uninvasive. It's so not like what it was. I know that there were a lot of very scary, very true stories out in the beginning, but it is nothing like before. And anyone can be trained to do it. I mean, if you were to go to the CVS Minute Clinic, they would hand it to you and you would do it to yourself. So I love that we're having the nurses and the health assistants do it, and that Dr. Woodward is trying to get more nurses to help out with labeling, but it is so non-invasive and so not a big deal anymore as far as being scary for children, or like we need to quell the noise on that. It's not.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Because you do it every day.
Exactly.
Literally every day. And also, there's no more, like we wouldn't be, I'm not sure what our policy or what the nurse's stance is when swabbing the child or the staff, the student or the staff member. But we are not necessarily gowning up, N95, shield, double gloving. We're also not doing that anymore. So it doesn't look like, the people from ET coming at a child. Literally, we just have our masks on and a pair of gloves, which would be no different from anything else that we would be doing. So it's not like we're coming at, I think of the littles, the 5-year-old and the littles feeling like there's a scary person coming at me and they tell me it's not going to hurt, but I'm really frightened right now. It's not. It would be really no different other than the nurse probably putting a pair of gloves on, doing a little swab inside your nose and moving on.
And our children love our nurses.
So I am thinking though,
there is a lot of fear, especially, if you send your kid to school and you've signed this permission slip. I think we're gonna see a lot of people not sign it just out of fear, especially for little ones. And so maybe if we can have the nurses do a little video that's
Oh, I like it.
real quick, just shows what it's like. Even if it's not on a person, it's just, a stuffed animal or something, so that the parents understand what it is they're signing. Because if they've never had it and the kid has never had a test, and then of course we should have it translated.
Yes.
Because, I think that'll really help, and it's gonna really slow stuff down if we don't have those forms on file.
And that's a very good idea, Kelly. And maybe if they could, I don't know if this is in our purview, if it's our bounds, if they could show in the classroom. And I like the stuffed animal because the nurse can say, remember the video when we did it to
Yeah, Snoopy or whatever.
SpongeBob SquarePants or whatever.
I think he's out.
Yeah,
He's fresh.
Dora the Explorer's gone too, right? So
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate that Dr. Woodward is looking for more staff with this, because that is my worry, is just because we don't know what this is gonna look like. And if we have lots of kids who are testing in place, this is gonna take a lot of time for our staff to be able to test every student every day for those 5 days. And, who knows, maybe there'll be more. So I just getting a sense of what this looks like once we get into school and understanding that, and just knowing that we're here for you. Like if you think like this is way too overwhelming for our staff, just giving us that heads up of what's going on and what supports are needed. And it's good that we have some ESSER money to
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that we've completely derailed you.
That's all right. I know. These are all good questions.
And
a lot of us have kids, so it's all
Yeah, absolutely. So the definition of a close contact, the definition has changed some. It's basically the same, but only while indoors. So we do not have to do any contact tracing outdoors. So the close contacts are defined as individuals who have been within 6 feet of a COVID-19 positive individual while indoors for at least 15 minutes during a 24-hour period. So no more contact tracing outdoors, and certainly, helps with the idea of we get to play outdoors, we play together, share equipment. So kids were very happy with that in the spring. Andrew, you had asked me about the exemption. So asymptomatic, fully vaccinated close contacts are exempt. Bus close contacts are exempt because they are going to be masked. If there is a mask mandate on the bus, that has always been in place, a mask mandate on the bus, and we drive with our buses with the windows down. So they are exempt. And then close contacts who have had COVID-19 within the past 90 days, they are exempt. DESE is also listed classroom close contacts that remain 3 feet apart. And I'm going to explain why we are not going to include that, is because we are trying to get our children back to closest normal. We want children to interact during the school day. We want them to work together, interact in their, and participate together in their learning. And I don't think that at any grade level that we could guarantee that students for a 24-hour period have not spent 15 minutes less than 3 feet apart, right? So, so I am not adding that to the list because we want to encourage students working together in the classroom. And I think one outweighs that. I know it felt like a lot of quarantines last year, but when you really look back and the number of classrooms we've had, and we had schools that went months without having to have a quarantine and such. So I think it's more important that our children have more of a normal type of school experience than to try to keep them 3 feet apart, just so that when there is close contacts, we don't have to do that. So, so it's a decision. So even though in the guidance, you'll see that that's an option, that's the reason why I don't think we can add that to our list.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Lori, my mind is just going all over the place, but for our families, like my family who had to be quarantined about 6 times last year. If we have a close contact within or we have someone in our families. So I think that, students can go to school if there is a close contact in their family, right? Is that right? Because they're not the close contact. If somebody is a close contact in their family, they can go to school.
Are you referring to like if a sibling is
If a
defined as
sibling is
the
a
close
close
contact
contact.
based on their classroom?
Yes.
So I think that's a very good question, and I think we need to ask because that actually is not any part of the guidance right now.
I know, that's why my mind is.
Yeah, no, it is not listed.
Yes.
You remember our whole training that we did last, if you're an A, B, or C, right? And then we had to do that, and that was not listed. So I see Dr. Woodward writing furiously. Note, unless, Dr. Woodward, you saw that and I have not. She has been.
No, I'm sorry, I was unmuting myself. I haven't seen any guidance specific on that, but I have taken that down in my notes. I'm going to try and look with a more careful eye to see if it isn't any of that, but I will follow up and see if we can get greater clarification from the Department of Education for you.
Thank you.
It's a very good question.
I have one other question.
Mhm.
So if there is a COVID positive in the house, the student can come to school and be test in place? If there's a
That
close,
is not listed either, but.
okay, because that's.
We need the real
same as being a
clarification on
Close
that.
contact
Yeah,
in
there's
school, right? Okay,
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but it's that whole close contact from home if they are a close contact of a positive person. And our guidance last year was you have to stay at home and go through the quarantine.
Right, but now
Yeah.
that we have a test in
And
place with that.
I know, I don't know. Yeah, I know, I hear what you're saying. But definitely we need clarification on that. Thank you.
And you mentioned that you were going to share this information. So could you repeat when families will hear this in greater detail?
Tomorrow, I will send out a communication. I'm sure it's not the last communication.
Absolutely.
It is quite lengthy, and I apologize for that in advance. But families, staff will get something tomorrow.
And would it be possible to sort of do a quick bullet and put that on the district webpage? Facebook page that people maybe who use that as a resource could just see the key facts related to this as well?
Yes, I'll have to check with our webmaster
I mean,
to see if I can get that many bullets.
yeah, well, even if it's a link to something, just sort of making
Well,
sure that
the
we
letter
get
will
it
be on
out.
the website. We can do the link to the letter.
Yeah.
I know we can do that.
Yeah, and then also something on Facebook, I think would
Okay.
also be helpful as well. Bill has a
So
question.
if quarantined are not allowed to come to school for a period of several days, is there a possibility of going back to remote?
But there,
I know this, at the end of last year, the DESI said no more remote. And now we have this Delta, which is highly spreadable. Is that a concern from DESI to possibly go back to remote? Or do we as a district have that opportunity to go remote if somebody's quarantined or can't come to school?
so DESI has said no remote, and they have stuck by that. And we're expected to be in school 5 days a week. If you're quarantined, we will be able to connect to be able to provide work. We don't know exactly what that'll look like at this point, but there is not an expectation that staff would be providing any type of
Hybrid Zooming.
hybrid Zooming, that real time kind of instruction.
Okay.
Mine was about the Facebook thing, because I'm just thinking that, we're not in the habit yet of reading all the communication from school, because a lot of us are still trying to, just wear our flip-flops and sit on the sand. So having something on the Facebook page that just says, new explanations about protocols, click here, might actually get people to read through it, because I think a lot of people are still in denial about the fact that school's starting. I mean, not me, of course.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, I do too. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Andrew.
Is that the end of your, or I don't want to jump in if you had other things to
Yeah.
say.
No, that is the end. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I did say.
Jumping in earlier, but
No, I did finish the bullets around that.
It was, I just wanted to, I know it got asked a little bit earlier, but I had a question about clarification on the outside opportunities. And I know you said that you working through with the principals and developing those schedules. And so I just want to know, like, the guidance being given to the principals to develop those schedules for the buildings, is it requiring that there is additional outdoor time in excess of what is normally done during the day? Because I really did hear those concerns coming through about the masking and how much we really need those breaks, and that being a very important factor right now, you know, as equally as important as all the other things they're learning in the classroom. So I guess my question again is
there is an expectation. I don't know that I moved it to a requirement. We can certainly discuss that again with the principals, and whether it's required or we're leading with expectation greater than last year.
Because I do
Because
think
not
that,
everyone took advantage of
right, and that
opportunities.
if it's going to be coming back
Yeah.
about sort of inequities between
Yeah.
classrooms.
Yes.
Yeah. Melissa.
Thanks, Andrea. I actually had a very similar question to that. I also heard from parents, teachers, and students that they were not getting equal time outside, or some classrooms weren't going outside at all. And I found that extraordinarily frustrating on a number of different levels. So I'm interested to hear what the conversation looks like after speaking to principals, if it's going to be a expectation or a requirement, or I know that it's frustrating when you see your other classmates outside having masks off, having an opportunity to be kind of normalish, and your classroom never goes outside. And that's not what we're about in Falmouth. We're about equity. So thank you, Andrea, for bringing that up.
I do want to just add, it's a little bit different at the elementary level, where there's a little bit more freedom in the opportunities to go outside than what a high school looks like when you're moving from class to class and trying to work out some kind of schedule like that. And it's just, it's more difficult. I'm just not saying it's impossible. And there are, many teachers that want to get outside, but and some courses lend itself much better to being outside at the high school level, right? So I'm just saying there is, we have to talk through if it's going to be a requirement, what that would look like.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, we obviously can't have some classes outside, but I would like to encourage it as much as possible.
We're all on that philosophy. Yes. We're all on the same
I hope
page
so.
on that. Yes.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
athletics. Has there been any, how to handle that? I know we used a lot of different protocols last year. Is that going to change? Have we received anything from the state? Or is that going to be done internally?
So we are moving forward with athletics as if it's a normal year, except when you're outside, you don't have to be masked. Indoor sports, you'll have to be masked. So that's basically the only rule. The guidance that came down around chorus and band is the same. You may proceed inside, mask, with instruments, mask. The instruments need to be masked as well. And outside they don't. So that's the guidance moving forward.
Okay.
We are at the high school level, we are keeping the locker room, 2 to a locker room, and coming fully prepared for sports at this time, opposed to having a whole sports team in the locker room. So we are at this time keeping that rule, and we can revisit at some point, but
Yes.
we really talked through that and felt that, just to start with, we just really need to go slow on that piece of it.
Was that 2 students in a locker room? Sorry.
Yeah, 2 students at a time in the locker room.
So, and that's for PE and for sport, or just for sports?
We did both last year. I assume it's both.
Yeah,
I mean,
I-
actually, I was
If it's
only involved in
PE, they'll have
the,
their
I was
mask
only
on
involved in the
anyway, because
conversation
they're in
around
school.
sports, but I would assume that's the same. Yeah,
If it's PE, they'll have their mask on anyway, because it's inside.
yeah, they would. Right, and they,
Unless it's project.
In my- oh, I talked out before without you recognizing me, so I'm sorry. but-
It's,
And I was gonna say an update about sports that Bill, yesterday was very still air. So I heard all day long and it made me smile. I'm out there in my backyard. So I heard all the sports. all
and
day long.
band, did you hear band? Because I heard.
Yes,
They started,
the band. and I
they
heard
started
the-
yesterday as well.
The rhythm thingy that they use, so.
Yep.
that's awesome.
So those rules about getting ready beforehand or whatever, paying off because they're out there playing.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Very nice. Thank you for your update. Forward to hearing more.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm just thinking that we have so many questions. Maybe we could have, I don't know, like a shared Google Doc or something that would, because I feel that we're kind of bombarding you with so many things. Maybe there's a way that a better way for us to kind of, as my mind is working, kind of just jotting them down. So you have them as a reference. So it's not a surprise when we're asking.
Well, not that, but if it would speed up communication, because if you have questions, others are gonna have questions.
Yeah.
We'll get answers to them and I can do communications out and get those answers to people.
And maybe
So,
we can make it a shared document, so, people can just add questions, and then as you find the answers, you can answer them. And then we could be ready to prepare, or to present them to the next meeting, or however you want to do that, on Facebook or whatever you.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
okay.
So yes, we'll look into another way of communicating and receiving questions. We'll look at that. Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving on, so routine business, approve the minutes of July 20th, 2021. We're sort of toward the end of our packet.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Is there a second? Andrea, any edits? Okay, seeing none. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from July 20th, 2021. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, passes unanimously. Thank you. Looking for the next sheet. Committee member reports. Any committee member reports? Kelly.
So just an update that the negotiations team has started talking with FEA about the wonderfully very few things that are going to be different going into the next school year. So more to come on that. We're just getting started.
Excellent, thank you for that update. Any other updates?
No.
Okay. That's funny. So that's it. Is there a motion?
I have a request.
Oh, request. Yes, I do. There's some, Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, request information on, to hear sort of a summary of the meetings and input on the use of ESSER funds and what our next steps are on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrea. Terry.
And many parents have been talking about lost curriculum and things like that. Have we done any testing? Have we done any looking at grade levels or anything, Lori, that we could?
Yes, we are, yes, we have, and we are planning on presenting that
Okay,
in
that's-
September.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Melissa.
Can we look and see what our numbers are for students? How many students we've lost during the, just during this time? And are we, in the students that we have, that have left Falmouth Public Schools, are we giving them exit interviews, and where are they going? Are they doing homeschooling? Are they going to are they going to private school? Have they just moved? I'm just interested in the enrollment and the exit interviews as to where they're going.
Great, thank you. Kelly.
And then mine was, we had a lot of questions around the SRO piece tonight, and I think that I think for me, a lot of that comes from not really understanding the layout of their involvement in the building. And I'm sure there is something that really lays out what that role looks like in action.
And so I want to know about that. So maybe then I'll answer my questions next time. Okay, great. Any other requests for information? What? Very good. Now is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, Melissa makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Lisa, I think it's so hard to see. Okay, Lisa made a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you,
On the
everyone.
dot.
Thank you.